Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening to the listening public, the wonderful people here on the island of Nevis, our brothers and sisters on St. Kitts. Good evening to you. Those of you who are in the Caribbean, good evening to you. I can think of my friends in St. Martin, those in Anguilla, those in Saba, Statia, those, of course, who are in Antigua and Barbuda, those who are in Trinidad and Tobago, United States Virgin Islands, Rock City, St. Thomas, in St. Croix, where the Crucians are. And of course over there in St. John's, those in the BVI, particularly Tortola, Virgin Gorda, Antigua, wherever you may be this evening, good evening to you and welcome to another edition of On the Mark. Those of us who are in the United States and Canada and the United Kingdom, it may be a little cold where you are, but good evening to you and trust that you're staying warm. Today is Valentine's Day the 14th, that's why I'm wearing something red. I'm trying to feel in the Valentine spirit, and I have come here. I could have been elsewhere, but I have been missing, as you know, for the past two shows. I want to thank the Honorable Eric Evelyn and the Honorable Troy Liebert for filling in for me. And I did ask the Mrs. pardon, beg her pardon, and ask her permission for me to come tonight so that I can be here and to wish you all a wonderful Valentine's Day. It is my hope that the Valentine's Day celebrations that have occurred all across the world will remind us to love each other, to cherish each other, and always make every day Valentine's Day, to try our very best to take care of each other and to be there for each other. Valentine's Day for me is not just about the person that you're in a relationship with, meaning your wife or your girlfriend, your boyfriend, or your husband, as the case may be. It also means showing love to other people and showing love to everyone that you might encounter. It could be the person on the street, it could be your neighbor, it could be a stranger. Show love. And let Valentine's Day remind us all that love is, in fact, the most powerful emotion. And where love exists, there's no room for anything else. Light, as we say, always drives out darkness. And so I invite all of us to celebrate Valentine's, not just today, but every day. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, at the top of the show, I normally try to send some greetings, but also I try, where I have the information, to share news that affects our community. And sometimes, because this is a circumstance of this thing called life, that we have persons in the community who have passed. I was very saddened to hear of the death of Mr. Woolard, Gavin Woolard, who I think all of us knew very well, a very quiet, unassuming family man, and someone who died in quite tragic circumstances here on the island, leaving his wife and I believe four sons, but also leaving his dad, Mr. Woolard, who's known to us all, who's a very humble and genuine soul right in Ramsbury, who has taught thousands perhaps of persons here to drive, leaving his mom, leaving his siblings. I know his brother particularly well, Professor Keithley Woolard, and I just want to take a moment to extend my deepest condolences to the entire family. The funeral service was held, I'm told, yesterday. Regrettably, I had some unavoidable commitments, but I want the family to know that my thoughts and prayers were with them and that I wish them peace. I wish them to be comforted, and I'm hopeful that the prayers of all of us will comfort them in their hour of difficulty and in their hour of bereavement. If I can say one word of comfort, it would be that as time, the pain does get a little less. It never disappears, but it does get a little less. And I do know Mr. Woolard was loved by us all. He was a very gentle person, very unassuming. I remember he used to come sometimes to our political meetings. He always had a kind word, very gentle word. He was never one to be excited or excitable. Never one, as far as I know, to be angry and have any vitriol in him. And his wife similarly. I always used to marvel that these two people seem so beautifully matched in terms of their temperament, both very gentle people. And so I would want his wife especially and his children to know that we as a community are thinking of them and that we are with them. On that note, let me also express my deep condolences to the David family right there of Craddock Road. I learned of the passing of Leroy, my very good friend, whom I knew here, but whom I got to know even better, I think, when he moved to New York. And then I was advised that another member of the family, Jean, would also have passed away. I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to the family The David family is a large family in Craddock Road. I want to extend my condolences to them, to my dear brother Michael Perkins, who's married into the family, to my brother Adrian Daniel, who's also married into the family, and to the entire David clan, and to say to them that I extend my deepest condolences, because they have had not just one but two deaths in that family. And to those who knew Leroy as well as I did, they knew he was a fun person. He was at every meeting we had in New York, he was there. I knew that he was always around us in the Bronx. In fact, I always used to marvel because he and another Craddock Roadian, a fellow called Bones, they were always together, inseparable. And so I just want to extend my condolences to the family and to let them know that we mourn with them, we empathize with them, and we pray for them that they will find some comfort. While I'm in that vein, I want to extend my condolences to the families of those two young children that were killed in tragic circumstances on our sister island of St. Kitts. I believe the family name is Keynes, and I want to extend my heartfelt condolences from top to bottom based on the information that is available. This is an unimaginable tragedy. And the fact that their own mother has now been arrested speaks perhaps to the depths of that tragedy and the very real difficulties that we have in our community, difficulties surrounding mental health, difficulties surrounding how we treat and how we deal with people. It reminds us, ladies and gentlemen, to check on each other. You know, someone said to me once that sometimes in the morning when you get up, just ask people, how are you today? Because we never know how people are. We never know what is happening. And a lot of times we ostracize people when they act outside what we consider the normal boundaries of human behavior in our society. We say, oh, they're crazy, and we ostracize them. Many times we don't know what's going on in people's lives. We have no understanding of the pressures that they might be facing, no understanding of their frailties, that because of their mental, their chemical makeup, that perhaps their brain functions differently to ours. And sometimes people just need a little help, a little love. Today's Valentine's Day, a little love, a little understanding, a little appreciation. And so I don't have enough information to comment with any degree of specificity in terms of what unfolded in St. Peter's. All I know is that two young children, two innocent children, have died. And that the arrest that has been made suggests to us all that there's a deeper tragedy here, a tragedy of horrible proportions that we as a society now need to grapple with. I'm to comment, lastly in that vein, on the fact that news reports have suggested that we have had yet another senseless murder in St. Kitts, in the area of Sandy Point, I'm told. It means that as we go into the latter part of February, the second month of the year 2024, that we have so far recorded 5 homicides within the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. One homicide is one too many. And you've heard those words said by me time and time and time again. And it gets to a point in all of our existence, it gets to a point in our society, in our communities, where even those who are in leadership positions run out of words. They run out of things to say. Crime, I have said often, is a societal problem. It is us who are raising the criminals, and it is us who are the victims of the criminals. I have decided that there's little value in seeking to inject politics into crime. In fact, I saw recently in the Bahamas, where the current Prime Minister of the Bahamas, when he was in opposition and vying to get into office, he put up gargantuan billboards all across the Bahamas saying that the Bahamas had had 390 some odd murders, and he thought it best to put those billboards up at all the roundabouts and all the public places in the Bahamas. Now he's the Prime Minister, and guess what? The murders have not stopped. And he has now gone into the Parliament in the Bahamas and urged the press not to publicize the murders because it is giving the Bahamas a bad name. And when questioned by reporters, well, what about what you used to do before you got into power? His response was, that was the past. And perhaps that is indeed the past. But it just says to us that sometimes what we use and what we see as politics, and I have been there myself, so I am not seeking to absolve myself from blame. I just feel that as we mature and as the country matures, that we start to realize that no particular leader has all the answers in relation to criminal behavior. I remind us all that Holy Writ records the first murder that was known to us when Cain killed his brother Abel. And so crime is something that comes from within us. Man is innately bad. And we have that power of choice that is given to us by God, and we can go left or right. We can be good or bad. Sometimes good and bad are mixed in equal measure in the same person. And some whom we call monsters, others call them son, beloved daughter, beloved husband, beloved father, beloved wife and mother. We as a society need to come together to address these issues. And perhaps it is telling, perhaps it has happened in such a way that it sends a message to us that as the nation is reeling from the deaths of two innocent children, and as the information unfolds, it appears that there was a mental health crisis at work, that we also have the situation of another death, premature death, a death by homicide. And so it tells us in a very vivid and graphic way, perhaps the most graphic way possible, that we have work to do. As a society and as a community, we have work to do. And the reason why I say that it is a leader's responsibility, no doubt, to keep us safe, a leader's responsibility to put the necessary mechanisms in place, the police and the investigation and the courts and all of the accoutrements that accompany law enforcement and national security. I agree. And the buck must stop somewhere. And in this case, it must stop with our Minister of National Security, who also happens to be our Prime Minister. But having said that, our history has shown us that since the time of Dr. Denzel Douglas, going back to his ascension to the office of Prime Minister in 1995 and following, every single leader that this country has had, and every single year and every single term, we have had to grapple with this issue of violent crime. It tells me, therefore, that despite the expenditure, despite the budgets devoted to national security, at the end of the day, what we need to focus on is how do we change minds and how do we change hearts? And how do we encourage our people to shy away from these types of behavior? Where now you can't have a disagreement without being disagreeable. You can't have an exchange of views without resorting to violence, and the worst form of violence, when you have no compunction about taking life. Some have said bring back the death penalty. I think we all know that that will not solve it. The death penalty now exists. It is just not carried into effect. But even if it were, would that stop people who in their hearts are inherently wicked and bent on evil. I think we need to call on our churches, we need to call on our men and women of faith, our saints of God, to pray for us. But it is no good for asking people to pray for you if you're not prepared to pray for yourself, and if you're not prepared to allow the light to come into your heart and for you to change your ways. The preacher can pray all day for you. If you're not listening, if you're not interested, then there won't be a difference. And so I think all of us have a duty. All of us have a duty. Those in St. Kitts, those in Nevis, there's a tendency sometimes when you hear something is happening in Bastille, McKnight, you say, oh well, that's not happening in St. Paul's. St. Paul's quiet. When you hear something is happening in St. Kitts, Nevis, people say, oh well, that's happening over there, Nevis quiet. But crime is no respecter of boundaries or persons or personalities. Crime is crime, and criminals are criminals. And what we need to do, all of us, is to say enough is enough. A lot of us see and don't say. We're quick to talk people business. We're quick to say who there with who, and who house you see who coming out of, at what hour. But when it comes to assisting law enforcement to arrest crime, we suddenly become deaf and mute and blind. We can't hear, we can't speak, we can't see. And that, my friends, does one thing and one thing only. It emboldens the criminals. It makes them feel that they have a sense of invincibility and a sense of impunity. Because ultimately, just as the criminals are created by the society, by you and I, the only way that we can arrest it is for the society to engage. Mentor somebody. You see a youngster that's going off the path, and sometimes you could see them very early. Try to reach out. What are the circumstances? Are they in an abusive home? Are their parents able to take care of them? Reach out to somebody. I go back to what I said earlier. When you wake up tomorrow morning, reach out. Are you okay? How are you doing? It's an important question. And we must seek in this country to become kinder and gentler, to look out for each other, and to seek as much as possible to be our brother's keeper and our sister's helper. I will move on from that to a more joyous note. I want to publicly record my congratulations to Dr. Prime Minister Drew, Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew, forgive me, and his new bride. The nation was pleased to hear the news that Dr. Drew, our Prime Minister, got married in Barbados just over the past weekend. I have expressed my congratulations to him privately. I now do so publicly, and to encourage him and our new First Lady to have a long life, to love each other, cherish, respect, and always be there for each other, to be each other's best friend, and to see whatever they can do to be good to each other. Marriage relationships aren't easy, and every person's relationship is different. And I'm not qualified to advise our Prime Minister. I'm only qualified to wish him well, and wish him all the best and all the happiness that the world has to offer. St. Kitts and Nevis has not had a married Prime Minister since the days of our national hero and first Prime Minister, Dr. Kennedy Simmons. We had Dr. Douglas for 20 years. We had Dr. Harris for 7 years. And so this is the first time now that the country has had, since 1995, a Prime Minister who's married. And so we welcome that. It's important to show that family and family commitment at the head of our government, at the head of our parliament. And so again, we congratulate Dr. Terence Drew, our Prime Minister, and his wife, our new First Lady, and wish them well. Ladies and gentlemen, I was away for a few days on a personal trip. I like to emphasize that because, you know, here there's often the accusation that we are somehow squandering public funds. So I was on a personal trip. Means, therefore, there was no public expenditure on my trip. My wife is from Grenada, and while she has lived here for most of her life, she decided that she wanted to be in Grenada, and so we had a bit of a holiday there, family get-together. But it also coincided with the 50th anniversary of independence of the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. I want to use this rostrum to extend heartiest congratulations to Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, the government, and the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique on their 50th anniversary of independence. I should share with you, the audience, that I was very impressed at what I saw in Grenada. We had not been there for a few years. And the level of investment that I saw, particularly in hotel and resort development, the level of activity that I saw, Grenada was as if the only thing I can liken it to is when you dig a beehive, you disturb a hive, and you get that activity, that frenzy of activity. You're going to town, you can't find a park, you go everywhere you go is people, shopping, business. And I was very impressed. I had the opportunity while there to visit Silver Sands, which is one of their newer resorts, very high-end resort. Silver Sands has just built a new boutique property called Silver Sands Beach House, and we are given a tour there. Again, a very beautiful property. And then in an area called La Sagesse, we went and we had a tour of the Six Senses Resort, and next to it, the same developers, Range, who would have developed the Park Hyatt, they are now doing an intercontinental hotel. So the Six Senses, and right next to it, intercontinental, on a coast in Grenada, which has not seen that level of development before. I believe that La Sagesse is in an area called St. David. And I was impressed, ladies and gentlemen. I did not get to go to Carriacou and Petit Martinique. In fact, I've never been to Carriacou or Petit Martinique. But certainly what I saw of Grenada, the mainland, the Big Island, I was very, very impressed. And I want to commend the Prime Minister, Honorable Dr. Deacon, I'm sorry, not Doctor, but the Honorable Deacon Mitchell, and certainly his predecessor, the Honorable Dr. Keith Mitchell, and those who would have gone before him. While I was there, I had the benefit of being invited to a few functions, and one of such functions was a reception that was put on by the Foreign Minister of Grenada. And it was good to reconnect with diplomats around the region, diplomats serving various countries around the region. And I was very pleased to have engaged in conversations with them about various issues that are impacting the region and impacting St. Kitts and Nevis in particular. And because I knew a lot of them, it was an easy conversation to have. It was there that I would have seen our own Cabinet Secretary in St. Kitts, Dr. Marcus Natter. He would have come to represent the Prime Minister and the federal government. At the independence celebrations for Grenada, I confess I have not seen that outpouring anywhere before. It was a sea of colors, yellow, green, red, the colors of the Grenadian flag, and the entire country was festooned with colors. Trees and all were wrapped. It looked like they even paint the grass the colors of the flag. The celebration was at a level that I have not seen before, and it warmed my heart to see such patriotism on display in the Spice Isle. At the independence celebrations, they had the President of Ghana was the guest of honor. He was there, and leaders from across the OECS and across the region were represented. And they had a fantastic show at the stadium, including a drone show. And those of us who would have attended the 40th anniversary of independence for St. Kitts and Nevis, we had the benefit of that drone show as well. It was spectacular, and the people really loved it. I want to say thank you to the people of Grenada, to my family there, Brian and Les and the kids and the entire family, for the reception that Sharon and I received. It was so warm and welcoming. Grenada has always been a beautiful place, a place that is near and dear to me. And I went up to the falls and I had to put my feet in the water and really go to the river, as we would say, and have that enjoyment. And I want to thank everybody who made our trip such a wonderful trip. I could not end this aspect without paying homage to Lady Betty Hopkins at the Spice Island Inn. And those who know Lady Betty would know that she is, I like to tell her, she's in a vision, living in Grenada. But Lady Betty, always beautiful, always regal. And she and her husband, now of blessed memory, my dear friend Sir Royston, they own Spice Island Inn. And they run it as a family business, and it is something truly to behold. One of the finest properties and the best hospitality on offer in the island of Grenada. So Betty, thank you so much for your hospitality. Thank you for being a friend. And we had a wonderful time staying with you. And we hope to see you again soon. But not in Grenada. We want to see you here, home, in Nevis, to visit with us. Ladies and gentlemen, this is On the Mark. I had decided I would not tarry too long tonight because I've been accused of taking up all the time with these lengthy soliloquies. It is 8:30 o'clock. For those of you who are listening and not out having dinner for Valentine's with your loved ones, I invite you to call in at any point that you so desire and to put anything that you wish on the table for discussion. Now, it is Valentine's, but you know the show is what it is. And so there are a couple of matters that I wanted to alert you about. One, we had a visit from Saudi Arabia. And the Saudi Development Fund would have come to the Federation to visit specifically to talk about the geothermal project and the requests to the Saudi government for financial assistance to take us over the edge, over the finish line in relation to this particular project. I want to thank again Dr. Terence Drew for his commitment to this project, our Prime Minister. I want to thank the Honorable Congress Maynard, who journeyed to Nevis to meet with us and to bring in a large contingent of his people over. I want to thank our own Albert Gordon at Nevlik and his efforts working with Skellig and Sinkits. We are seeing a high degree of cooperation between our two utility companies. And I want to commend Mr. Stedman Truss for his chairmanship of the Nevlik board and the board members who have really guided Nevlik through some turbulent and difficult times. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that geothermal will be transformational for this country. And you've heard me talk about it time and time again because I am committed to that development because I think it will transform lives. And as leaders, what we do is often not just for today, it is for the future. And so I really want to commend the efforts that have been made thus far as we seek to fill the financing gap in this project. And I'm hopeful that the Saudis, who expressed great excitement at this project and great interest in exploring with us financing for this project, they indicated they'd never done a geothermal project before, but they wanted to be associated with a project that had the potential to transform St. Kitts and Nevis into the greenest place on planet Earth. It is within our grasp. I can feel it, I can touch it, I can smell it, I can see it. It is now for us to make it a reality after 2 decades of talking about it. And so I want to thank them for that visit and to look forward to good things to come as we work through the necessary parameters of how this deal is going to be done. On the political front, because it is Valentine's, but the politics is also important. You will be aware that we had an election here on the 12th of December 2022. In that election, the Concerned Citizens Movement again won a majority of seats and again won the popular vote. I say again because the CCM has won every single election in this country from 1992 until now, except an election in 2006. It's a record which is perhaps unparalleled in the entire region in terms of the number of elections and the number of victories. 2022 election, 12th of December. The NRP lost again. The CCM won again. The NRP decided, in the person of Dr. Patricia Bartlett, who ran against me, and in the person of young J.D. Keynes, who ran against the Honorable Spencer Brand, that they would not accept the results, and so they decided they would move the court. J.D. Keynes would have hired a firm called Cozier and Associates. Dr. Bartlett would have hired a firm called Hector. I'm not even sure what they call, but it's a firm of Hector and Nisbet, I think. Hector and Nisbet, yes. Roberto Elhansville Hector and Patrice Nisbet. They fell into grave error in terms of their pleadings and the timing of their pleadings. And the law as it relates to election petitions is quite clear, that there is no room for error, because the courts have consistently said that the parameters that have been dictated and the procedural requirements are not requirements that are a mere guide. They're mandatory. And so the court doesn't have the capacity or the jurisdiction to enlarge time, to say, okay, you're out of time, but we'll give you some more days because you have a good reason to be out of time. No, it is quite strict, and the reasons for that are clear. You cannot have a government that is being challenged, seats that are being challenged, and so the governance of the country held up while election petitions are going on. So the law says you have to be precise. 21 days you have to bring your petition. If you go outside 21 days, if 21 days and 2 hours, sorry, you're out. Well, both Dr. Bartlett and J.D. Keynes were out by some distance. Dr. Bartlett less so, J.D. Keynes more so. That is a matter for them and their lawyers as to why they were out of time. That is not a matter for me. But if I were representing them, knowing the law as it relates to election petitions, that would have been my first order of business, to go to the calendar and start to count, and to ensure that whatever I filed within the time stipulated by law, which is 21 days. Having filed outside the time, my lawyers, Daniel Brantley, and the lawyers for Spencer Brand, also Daniel Brantley, would have done the obvious and applied to strike out the petitions, because the petitions were bad in law. The Honorable Attorney General, representing, I believe, the Supervisor of Elections, they joined and filed their own applications to strike because the petitions were bad in law. They were incurable. No judge, no matter how sympathetic, could help them. They were dead on arrival. And as we know, only Jesus can revive the dead. And as a result, the court came to the conclusion that it had to come to. The election petitions were bad, incurably bad. They were dead on arrival. Having been filed out of time, they had to be dismissed. And that is what happened. The petitions were dismissed on our application that the petitions were incurably bad. The petitions could not survive. They were not even on life support. They were already dead. And so the judge agreed, and the judge struck out the petitions. To the credit of Dr. Bartlett, she decided, or perhaps the advice she got from her lawyers, I don't know, was to leave the matter there. And so the only outstanding issue for Dr. Bartlett was one of costs, because the court ordered that she and Miss J.D. Keynes would have to pay costs. Miss Keynes to Mr. Brand and Dr. Bartlett to me. There has been some wrangling back and forth about costs, but I can report tonight that the sum that has been consented to by Dr. Bartlett to pay is some $55,000 plus VAT, which brings the total up to, I think, somewhere around $63,000 or $64,000. And so that is the amount. It is considerably less than we had asked for, but nevertheless, that is the amount that her lawyers thought that was reasonable, and I was not going to argue over that. My lawyers accepted that that is the amount that she is to pay. I believe now she has 14 days to pay it, after which, if she doesn't, then we'll have to take further enforcement action. We hope that that will not be necessary. On the other side, Ms. J.D. Keynes, differently advised, being represented by Cozier and Associates, sought to appeal first to the single judge of the Court of Appeal. The single judge dismissed their application. They then renewed an application, this time to the full court of the Court of Appeal, that is, to 3 judges. Those 3 judges again rejected their application. The lawyers again tried that in election matters, the Court of Appeal has a final say. There's no further appeal anywhere else. They can't go up to England on an election matter. And so, for all intents and purposes, that matter is done, save only for the issue of costs. But there's an interesting thing that appears to be happening in that matter involving Ms. J.D. Keynes. One, Ms. J.D. Keynes isn't coming to court. So when these matters are being heard, for some reason Ms. Keynes is not there. And 2, the affidavits that are being sworn in support of these applications on behalf of Ms. Keynes are not being sworn by Ms. Keynes. Those affidavits are being sworn by persons working at the law firm. It's rather interesting. And I am just a little curious to know what is happening there. Because, as I said, Dr. Bartlett acted wisely, in my view, in not exacerbating the issue of cost. She said, well, I lose, I gone. I done with that. J.D. Keynes, on the other hand, has kept going. One time to the single judge of the Court of Appeal, then to the full court of the Court of Appeal, then now making all kinds of applications. But J.D. isn't in court when these applications are being made, and the affidavits are not being sworn by J.D. So there are a number of questions that one can ask. I will leave that question and answer session for another time. But what I do know is this, that with every application made in the name of J.D. Keynes, and every application that is lost, that more and more costs are being awarded in favor of Mr. Brand. Put differently, the amount of financial burden on young Miss Keynes is being aggravated and increased every time there is a further application, a further motion in the court in relation to this matter. And so what might have been $40,000, $50,000 is going higher, because the Court of Appeal said when they dismissed the application that costs are awarded to Mr. Brand at 2/3, if I recall correctly, of the costs awarded below. So if Mr. Brand's bill below, let me get an easy figure, was $60,000, then that foray into the Court of Appeal is going to cost an additional $40,000. So what was 60 is now 100. I'm just drawing a reference. And every time there is an unsuccessful application, costs keep adding on and adding on. So it's going to be rather interesting to see where that matter leads. It is a matter that is, as I said, on the issue of costs, still live. A substantive matter has been determined because the court has struck out these petitions. And so in the case of Dr. Bartlett, her lawyers have agreed to pay $55,000 plus VAT. And in the case of Ms. Keynes, that matter keeps going, and I believe we will have some final adjudication on it in the very near future. I just wanted to report that because these matters were filed against us, alleging all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, we have been vindicated in the court because these matters were clearly frivolous, vexatious, an abuse of the process, and certainly filed out of time. And when I say filed out of time, it means that all these costs are costs thrown away, really, costs that have been wasted. Because if you can't even get your foot in the courthouse door, you can't even get the procedure right, then it means that it was never really a serious effort or serious attempt. And so that is where that matter now lies. I will raise one other matter, since I'm on the microphone here and nobody's calling me yet, to say the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, my brother and friend, was grossly defamed on internet and on radio by an activist, former failed candidate, failed leader of the NRP, one Kelvin Daly, who became quite famous at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College in St. Kitts. Some call him CFBC Daly. Well, he would have defamed the Honorable Alexis Jeffers. And the Honorable Alexis Jeffers said enough was enough and he took action. That is between them. Now, I was neither privy to the comments that were made by Mr. Daly, nor was I privy to the action that was subsequently taken in relation to those comments by the Honorable Alexis Jeffers. Now, I know Alexis Jeffers well, and he has said one thing to me consistently over the years. Since we were mere boys in school, he said to me that his name was the most valuable thing to him, and that he will do what he needs to do to protect his name. I know that about him because he has said that to me 100 times, that his name is important to him. And so his view is that he was defamed, and he has done what is available to all of us who feel that we have been defamed, and that is to take matters to the court of law. He has done so. To my surprise, I got a call saying that Mr. Daly has responded to the litigation, but somehow, and he's using the same firm of Cozier and Associates, they have now, in their response to Mr. Jeffers, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, they have named me, Mark Brantley, Vicky's son from Brownhill, Irvin and Vicky's son. Now, what I know about what Daly go on radio to say about Zook, what does that have to do with me? I wasn't there when he said it. Me never tell him to say it. I never send him a message and say, boy, go and talk about this. It had nothing to do with me. But Alexis sued in defamation, and in their response, they have now sought to drag me into the litigation. I don't know what I have to do with that. And I just want to say that it appears to me that there are some people out there who are seeking to use the court for political reasons. And that's not what the court is there for. The court is there to do justice between parties and to deal with legitimate grievances. And it is a colossal waste of judicial time, in my humble opinion, for those who continue to try to use the court to harass people, to use the court for political purposes. And that is why I have said, regardless of what some may say or feel or think, once they come at me and the court orders costs, I'm going to collect my money. I'm going to collect it, if even to give it away after I've collected it, but I will collect it, because there has to be some consequence. There has to be some consequence for this continued harassment of people. You hear what I tell you? Daly went on radio, says something about Zook. Zook sued Daly. Now Daly respond to the suit and say Vicky and Irvin's son must come in the courthouse too. I must come in the dance when me can't dance. What you tell me come in the dance for? I must come in the dance. Political harassment, because what on earth do I have to do with that matter? The answer, nothing. This fella Cozier, who was quite famously renamed in the Parliament by none other than the Honorable Vance Emery of blessed memory. He went and put a case in the court against me as well, and against the Honorable Spencer Brand. And just to tell you the foolishness that they engage in, you know one of the things that Mr. Cozier asked the court to do? To bar Spencer and myself from being in office. That the court should declare our nomination null and void, and what I would call, for want of better language, abject, utter foolishness. Because the law again is clear. If you're going to challenge somebody's nomination election, there's a process. That's why you have an election petition. You can't come in some side win in some civil litigation and go talk about the court must bar people who the public has elected, the electorate has put us there, you know. We weren't nominated like some in the past, you know. We were elected. We went through an election and people went out and voted. They made their X. They made their mark for Mark. They made their mark for Spencer. That is how we get there. If you're unhappy that we're there, democracy provides a process for you to fix that. You know what that process is? Go out there and talk to people and persuade people that you can do a better job. And then persuade them to go and make their mark for you. That is the way democracy works. But it seems to me that we have in this country some people who feel that somehow God has ordained that they are the ones to lead Nevis. And when the people reject them time and time and time again, rather than them saying, okay, let me change the message, or let me change the messenger, or let me change both. No. They then start to find other ways to try and attack. And now the court, it seems, has become the place that they're going to. Well, I am hopeful. I am hopeful that the court starts to use its own powers. Because successive courts, time and time again, these frivolous lawsuits are being brought. The same Dwight Cozier. Can't remember the name that Mr. Amherst called him in the house, but others out there may know. Nobody call in and tell me though. I don't want to hear. But that same fellow sued me before, saying that I said something about him on social media when nothing could be further from the case. I said nothing about the gentleman that could in any way, shape or form be defamatory. He claimed I was writing under some false name. The court said, but that's nonsense, knock it out. He went and went and went, the court knock him out, knock him out, knock him out. He now owes me costs. But guess what? Not paying. It's probably been about 12 or 14 years since that matter has been in the court, up to now. Just one foolish appeal after another, after another, after another. At what point does it end? At what point do we say, listen, we can't continue to harass people in this way? Bringing baseless cases, filing them one after the other. For what reason? It has to stop. And I just want to say it publicly because I think sometimes members of the public don't have a full appreciation of the level of animus that is being generated in the country by people who lust for power. You see me? I say the voice of the people is the voice of God. I had one difficulty in my entire political life, and that was in 2011. And I had that difficulty not with the people who voted, but with the people who were denied the right to vote. Understand me carefully. I never argue with anybody yet about who they vote for. That is their business. Because nobody could argue with me. I will vote for who I want to vote for. So I don't argue with people over that. I did, however, take great umbrage when the NRP removed over 200 of my supporters from the voters list in the dead of night. I took umbrage and I went to court, and the court agreed with me that election was null and void, and Henry Daniel was kicked out of office as being null and void. Infamy visited upon him and upon the NRP and upon the island because of their activity. They went back to the polls in 2013, they lost. 2015, they lost. 2017, they lost. 2020, they lost. Twice in 2022, they lost. Well, my God. If the people keep telling them they want you, you lose, you lose, you lose, you lose, you lose. Well, don't you do some introspection and some reflection and say that something is wrong? Something is wrong. It's either your message or your messengers. And the thing that I have looked at in the recent iteration of the NRP, they keep changing people, You know, since I have been leader of CCM, NRP was led by Joseph Parry, then by Elhansville Hector, then by Kelvin Daly, and now by Janice Daniel Hodge. You hear that? That's since 2017. 6 years. They've had 4 leaders in 6 years. They keep chopping and changing in my political career. I have run against Hensley Daniel. I've run against Elhansville Hector. I've run against Kelvin Daly. I'm now running against Patricia Bartlett. Chop and change. In Gingerland, you've had Corey Tyson. You've had Bijan Hanley. You now had what's his name? Oh dear, how could I forget the young man's name? Rohan Isles. Chop and change. In town, you had Elhansville Hector. Then you now have J.D. Keynes. And then in St. James, you had Patrice Nisbet. You now have Janice Daniel Hodge. In St. Thomas's, you had Joseph Parry for a long time. You now have Cleon Stapleton Simmons. The results, despite the constant changing of candidates, has been the same. But you know what has also been interesting, and where the level of consistency has remained, is that all of them drink the same Kool-Aid when it comes to cussing and maligning and vitriol. That's their job. And the commentators have remained the same over the years. Check them out. The same people have been talking for NRP on social media and radio. They've been doing so since 2013 and prior. And it's the same message. Vitriol, attack, no ideas, no suggestions, no anything. And the results are the same. It leads then a reasonable fellow like me to conclude that NRP is CCM's best friend. Let's go to the phones and take some calls. Good evening, you're on the mark.
Mark, good evening.
Good evening, my brother. How are you?
I feel good tonight.
Good to hear you, man.
And I'm proud of you. I want to ask you a question, then go into a little statement I have here. Today, a lady came to me and she told me Nevis getting $5 million of our money. Is it true that Nevis get $5 million per month from the federal government?
No. Nevis has been getting for some time now $5.5 million per month. It was intended to be a share of the citizenship by investment inflows, and it was intended to be a temporary measure until we're able to work out a formula to share those proceeds between the two islands. So while that process is being worked on, Nevis has been getting $5.5 million each month from the citizenship by investment inflows.
There's a reason why I asked you that, because I have a serious problem with the ordinary man on the road coming to complain to me on a regular basis about Nevis getting our money. So I am making a special appeal to people who are swell-headed or big-headed in politics. Let us try to teach our people the right thing, not go down the wrong path. So I thought I should ask you that.
Yeah, but even so, caller, I think I want to be pellucid that Nevis is not getting Sinkis' money. I think that people have had that misconception over the years, including some here in Nevis. Now, what I would call Sinkits money is when your cruise ships dock over there and they pay something to Scasper, that is Sinkits. When DuPont Jewelry pays its taxes, it is a business established in St. Kitts, that is St. Kitts money. If the government in St. Kitts sells land, that is St. Kitts money. I hope you get the point that I'm driving at. When on the other hand, we have a St. Kitts Nevis passport that is negotiated and granted to some persons in exchange for an investment in the country, then that money cannot be St. Kitts money. That money has to be St. Kitts and Nevis money. I liken it, my brother, to if you and I are brothers, because St. Kitts and Nevis are brothers, or sisters, or brother and sister, whatever you want to call us. We are one. So if in your household you have 2 sons, and you say to those 2 sons, this cow belongs to you both. Well, how can one son milk the cow and keep the milk, or sell the milk, and then say the money only belongs to him? It can't work so. Because if I go home now and I reach into my safe and I take out my passport, it says on it, citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis. And I challenge anyone out there who has our passport to check, it says the same thing. So how then can people argue that when money is coming from that same passport, the money belongs to St. Kitts? Do you know, caller, that the way the Citizenship by Investment program is set up, that there are developments in Nevis which are approved under the CBI. Four Seasons Resort is a good example. Those developments, notwithstanding they are in Nevis, anybody who is investing in them in order to get a passport under the Citizenship by Investment program has to pay all of the processing fees, the due diligence fees, and the registration fees to the federal government in Bastia, even though the application came out of Nevis and the investment is into a project in Nevis. That is where the program is set up, because the federal government has responsibility for national security. So how do people continue to make this argument that somehow the money, when it comes, belongs only to St. Kitts? I don't like to hear that argument. You know why, brother?
Tell me.
When the government of Canada in 2014, because of some excesses at the time with the same Citizenship by Investment program, decided that they were imposing a visa requirement. They did not say only for people from St. Kitts, you know. They say St. Kitts and Nevis. So if you are from Brownhill or Barnesgot, Hanley's Road or Hamilton, you had to get a visa now to go to Canada, because when the burden came, it came on the country, not the island. But somehow some are of the view that when the money comes, it must come to the island and not the country. And so what we're getting is a share from those monies, which is distinct from monies collected in taxes. When you pay your VAT and your corporate tax and thing in St. Kitts, Nevis is not getting any of that. I want to make that very clear.
Thank you.
What we're getting is a share of the CBI, the passport money. And we argue, and I think argue irrefutably, because there could be no sensible counter argument, that the passport is a national passport, is a St. Kitts and Nevis passport. It's like that code that I mentioned, that your father said, Mark and Johnny, this belongs to the two of you. Well, how Johnny gonna expect that he gonna milk the cow and sell the milk and keep all the money? It cannot work so.
There is a particular man in St. Kitts getting a lot of people constantly to complain. Hundreds of them complain to me. Why? Because they listen to me when I talk on the radio on Nevis defense. Because we are not serious when it comes to St. Kitts Nevis, you know. A lot of us, we only talking, you know. We only love Nevis, you know. A lot of people down here, I keep saying it, you know, for 30 years. We only love Nevis when it's convenient for us to form a government, you know.
Mm.
Let me ask you something else, Mark, because I'm trying to get something straight, because all the people who complaining you to me, they're listening tonight. Let me ask you something. Or for your memory, you think you could remember what's the budget for Nevis for the last year? Or per year, roughly, on average?
I don't have the number to hand, but it is over $200 million, just about 225 or something like that.
Good. Listen to the next stupid argument people come to me, Mr. Brantley. But DuPont, you're always talking about Nevis. Have you ever looked in what it did with $500 million under the farmer administration? What is $5 million over 7 years for a country like Nevis? When you budget per year is roughly around 200 million.
Well, let me put it in context for you, because
Let's go.
I've heard about this 500 million. First of all, that figure was grossly inflated, but that aside for the moment. As you say, that money came over a number of years, going back to 2015. A lot of that money did not come to the NIA. I want to make that pellucid. A lot of that money came to pay, for example, double salary. You can't say you get that money, meaning government. You understand what I'm saying? Because the money came for that purpose.
I'm with you.
So if the double salary was 7 million, the 7 million came to pay out right away to public servants. People forget that during that time, a number of infrastructural projects were done on this island. We built a police station in Newcastle, brand new. In fact, I'm sure you've seen it. It's one of the better.
I was there for the opening, you know.
Okay, right? We built this building in town, the new Treasury building. Remember, the old Treasury had been burnt down by arsonists.
One of the best looking buildings in Nevis.
Exactly. We built the water taxi facility to accommodate the water taxi business, which is now, I believe, one of the best investments made in this country when I see the level of activity that the water taxis are generating here between St. Kitts and Nevis. It has become the transportation of choice between our two islands.
Amen.
And that facility was done by us. We built roads across the length and breadth of this island. We built a whole CCTV center in Charlestown, state of the art. We have advanced the hospital despite the criticisms on that structure. We have advanced that to the point where the structure is up, the exterior is completed, we only now have to complete the interior. We built the Mondo track to the point where now that the Kim Collins Stadium is under construction, we will be having some national events at that Mondo track. Reflect with me, my friend, what would have been the situation if Nevis had not invested in an IAAF certified 9-lane state-of-the-art Mondo track facility? Where would our young athletes be running to qualify for Carifta? On grass?
Yes.
St. Kitts can now come over here. Just as we would go to Kim Collins, they can now come knowing they have an IAA certified surface to run on. We built that. And I can go on and on in terms of housing, in terms of development that we've had on the island. We invested in water. We invested in electricity. When we were being accused in St. Kitts by the former Prime Minister, after we left him, and in his rage and in his attacks, he started to say that I was a bad spender. I smiled to myself. You know why I smiled, my friend? Because Nevis had invested in generators for Nevlec, so we weren't having blackouts over here. Nowhere in Nevis has had the water problems of Keon or St. Peter's or even Frigate Bay. We have water problems from time to time. But when I hear our brothers and sisters and singers crying out, saying sometimes for 7 days they don't get water, every night water shut off, that is not the reality in Nevis. So we were investing in things that were long-lasting, that were necessary for our development, yet we were told we were bad spenders. But we were doing the things that were necessary to make us a sustainable island state. We paid double salaries all those years.
Yes.
And then people conveniently forget that in March of 2020, the entire world shut down when COVID hit. And so the little money that we were accustomed to get in Nevis from Four Seasons and from tourists and things of that nature, the bottom fell out of the bucket. There was nothing coming in. So we survived based on the resources that we were able to get, based on overdraft, based on loans, because I made a pledge that every civil servant on this island would be paid in full and on time. You know why I did that, sir?
I remember, you know.
I did that because I recognize that a lot of people are now out of work. And in a household which may have a family of 4, one may be working for government, one working at Four Seasons, one driving taxi, and the other one working at Montpelier Hotel. Well, guess what? The taxi man out of work, they work at Montpelier out of work, they work at Four Seasons out of work. So I said, I must ensure that those who are making a bread from the government, that they get their bread on time and in full. And I am proud to this day, if I were to die tomorrow, I want to be remembered that during COVID, every single worker for the Nevis Island government got paid on time and in full. We didn't give out no IOU in Nevis. We didn't ask for anybody to pay a pay cut. In fact, only the members of the cabinet took a pay cut, and I took no pay in Nevis for 22 months. That was what we did. So when people start to talk about money and what happened to the money, I said they have no appreciation of what has happened here on the island of Nevis over that period of time. I don't need to invite you to Nevis. I recognize the voice. I know you're here often.
Very often.
But I invite our brothers and sisters in St. Kitts to come over. Come and drive on our roads. Come and check out our water supply, our electricity supply. Come and look at the quality of our housing. Go over to Madden's and see what quality of housing with infrastructure put underground. We now put infrastructure now up on the pole, you know. When we building housing in Nevis now, we gone underground for those developments to make them resilient and sustainable. That is what I want people to come and see. Because some will have you believe that somehow money has been squandered in Nevis. Let me tell you lastly on this issue of money. We had a party in Nevis called the Nevis Reformation Party. They were in government in Nevis from 2006 until 2013. That was the period. I believe that the public should be reminded that under our constitution, there is a constitutional imperative. The law of the land, the highest law of the land, says that every year that government must place in the House of Assembly the audited accounts for the island. You know why that is important? It is important because it is through the audited accounts that you can tell whether money has been wasted. You can ask where the money gone, which ministries overspend. You see where the money come in and where the money go out. Between the period 2007 and 2013, the NRP government did not one time put any audited accounts in the house. Nevis had no idea whether we were coming or going. We had no idea who was thieving, who was spending, who was overspending, who was underspending. We had none because no audited accounts were ever filed during that period. When we got back into power, let me not use that language. When we got back into office in 2013, it was the Honorable Van Emery as Premier who said we have to fix this. We have to get our financial house back in order. And we had to do a look back and recreate all of those accounts. And I am pleased to say that as Premier of Nevis since 2017, not 1 year has gone by that I have not ensured that the accounts for the Nevis Island Administration are in the Nevis Island Assembly, for perusal by all. It becomes a public document. So all of those who are saying they want to know where money gone, I keep telling them, look at the budget and look at the audited accounts. The Director of Audit is an independent body under the Constitution. Look at that and you will see where money has come in and where money has gone out, because that is their job. That is what they do each year.
And before I say something else,
Yes.
can you give me some more clarity? Can you clearly say to me again, am I understanding you that the 500 million you would have gotten came from passport money?
Only from passport.
Well, that is your share.
Right? But I don't even think it was our share, because when people are cussing and say Nevis get $500 million, I remind them that what Nevis got was a mere 9%, I believe it was. I'm sorry, 7% of the passport money that came in.
I have the report. I have a report here to deal with that, you know.
93% of the money stayed in Bastia. So when they're talking about 500 million and how come money Nevis get, I always ask the question, how come nobody's talking about the rest of the money? And what happened with the rest of that money? Because Nevis got 500 million. Our sister Sinkits kept 93% of the money. People out in sixth form could do that math better than me.
Amen.
But that translates into billions of dollars that came in and that were kept in Sinkits. And I often say, when I was accused of being a bad spender,
Yes.
well, you mean you have billions of dollars and people in can't get water? Well, something is wrong.
Amen.
Something is very wrong. So
Ma,
this is the point I think needs to be made.
Yeah. Well, I'm sitting and I'm going to pray to God and ask Him if I should do another radio program. You know why I believe I should do a radio program again? Since Washington Archibald passed away, I don't think our people are enlightened enough or educated enough when it comes to the real things about life versus politics. And no wonder when I look in the dictionary, one of many reasons what it means, meaning of politician, one of the reasons why I see there is a person who acts in a manipulative and devious way to gain advantage. That is what's happening in my country in politics. A lot of politicians not going into politics for good. They go look like they go to war. Now, Mark, see if you could help me here today.
Yes.
A 75-year-old woman came to the store today. Today is Valentine's Day, and I did some business. She opened the door. We get along well, because even though she's my enemy, I get along with everybody, Mark. I will not die with an enemy. She opened the door. Good afternoon, Mr. DuPont. I notice when you call in these days on radio, your comment look like it's swerving towards back in labor. And you had your good government in power and you take them out. The customers, they were amazed. A woman said, oh my God, when we going to done with politics? She buying some stuff. She said, Mr. DuPont, could you tell me when we going to done with politics? But one thing I had for her today. Mark, do you know that I go to the Kingdom Hall?
I did not know, but I've heard in the past that well, I did not know you were regular, but I know in the past you have mentioned it. Do you know that that's where I grew up, in the Kingdom Hall?
And I hope you know, on a couple of occasions you came and I sat just behind you.
Oh, okay, okay.
Oh, okay. Well, let me help people with something here quickly from the Kingdom Hall. I am not a witness. I'm not here representing the witnesses. But let me tell you, Mark, I know of a fact that my life would not have been what it is today with the maturity that I have gathered over the 19 years. Constantly, never miss a Sunday. Even if I'm in America, in London, in Manchester, I find a Kingdom Hall for the Sunday morning. I'm telling you, 19 years, non-stop, never stop. And that is where my education is coming from. So one scripture I got for the lady, for she is listening, James 1, 19 to 20. If people tonight can write it down and read it before they go to bed, it might be of some good help. All I said to the woman, Mark, have a good day. Thank you. And I watch her. She went behind the store and she was arguing. You know why she was arguing? She was looking for a reply. Let's move on. Mark, I want to say to you the reason why I called in tonight. I thought I could sit down and listen, because last night I called in 3 times in a Nevis program. And I had to tell them last night on the program, I feel good again. You know why? Mark, you don't know how you make me feel as a politician, you know. You might have an idea. You might feel good about it, but you can't get the real feeling about my heart with you around still in politics. You make me feel so good with your maturity in terms of the way you could get on with the new Prime Minister now. I feel hope again in St. Kitts Nevis. I like the way you spoke about Congress Maynard a while ago. This is what bothering people in St. Kitts, as if they have forgotten the type of person I am. I can speak well of anyone to whom it is due. Let's move on to something else because I want somebody to get a call. I was listening to a program last week and ZIZ. This is for the entire nation and for us to understand how important to listen things overseas. I guess by now you would have heard that some leader down in the Virgin Islands, I don't know exactly about it because I don't read these things, got into some trouble with drugs in the US, right? And it seems as if from what I heard in the story, he gone to prison.
Yes, BVI, he was found guilty. I think sentencing is due to come.
Well, I want to wrap up soon. So hear this. A gentleman called in and ZIZ and say, I don't know why you the moderator got to be discussing something like this about the Virgin Island man. That is irrelevant to us. We need to hear about things that going on here. The same gentleman I am talking about, I wouldn't call his name, he's listening. So now that he's listening your show, allow me to read something very simple from the Bible to him, where young Timothy was given some instruction by Paul. So we go to 1 Timothy chapter 6, we read one verse, 10. For the love of money is the root of all sorts of injurious things, and by reaching out for this love, some have been led astray from the faith and have stabbed themselves all over with many pains. Mark, the reason why I end with this, I want St. Kitts and Nevis people to understand. It is easy to go after money. But Jehovah is teaching me these days, Carlton, you see you're a businessman and you make money, don't do like what you used to think 25 years ago. Me not pay no taxes because me not like what the government to do with my money. You know what I learned at the Kingdom Hall? No matter what you think the government is going to do with the money, you pay your share.
Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's.
So I want to say to the people in St. Kitts who might be tangling themselves with drugs, don't wait until you get in trouble. Take my advice. Get to know God. And Mark, another thing God wants me to do with my life, make sure when I get things into this country is something new, is a new inspiration God is giving me. I learned it from you too, you know. I heard you one night in a program saying it. Carlton, work hard to pay your share of taxes. Tomorrow, it was supposed to be the lady who went to pay me taxes today. It was too full. Tomorrow, I'm going to write some check to pay all my taxes, house and land and all the things them. And when I tell people I feel good doing it, they take offense to it. We in this country, I'm ending now, must make sure we work hard, give God praise and thanks, count our blessing, but be a part of the tax system to help build our country. Mark, you make me feel good, and I'm still around politics until you move off. I believe when you're done, I done, you know. Have a wonderful evening, and I'm happy to hear that you went to Grenada and had a good time with your family.
I did.
Take care of yourself. Oh, yes. Mark!
Yes.
Wait here. I have something written down here in my paper. It's very brief. Thank you for explaining to the nation whenever you travel, when you're using government money, and when you're not using government money. That is something in my brains I can't get out. How come other politicians don't say that? Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. I'll continue listening to you.
All right, my brother. Thank you very much for the call. I just got a note here, and I want to extend, first of all, my apologies. I didn't get the note early enough. But to my brother, Bernard Myers, and his lovely wife, Vernon, they're celebrating 44 years of marriage. So I want to extend my warmest congratulations to them. And I got another note, which has asked me to wish Sir Edmund Lawrence, our former Governor General, a happy 92nd birthday. And so Sir Edmund is 92. I am praying and hoping that he gets to that magic 100 and that he and his family continue to be well. Let me go back to the phones and take some more calls. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello?
Good evening, Michelle.
Good evening, my dear. You're on.
How are you tonight?
I am well. I am well. Good to hear you.
Ecclesiastic 3, verse 11 and 12. He had made everything beautiful in his time. Also, he had set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. I know that there is no good in them, but a man to rejoice and to do good in his life. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your scriptures. As always, every week you bring something for us, and for that I'm truly grateful. We're taking your calls, ladies and gentlemen, at 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Those are the numbers to call, and let's go straight back to the phones. Good evening, you're on the mark. Hello, caller.
Good evening.
Yes, please listen to your phone. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Mark, I heard you said something a while ago. And correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say back in 2020 when we had the COVID, you did not took any salary for 22 months?
Yes, that's what I said.
You said that?
Yes.
Can I ask you how you felt not taking any salary? The reason why I'm asking you how you felt, back in that same 2022, and let me say who I am. My name is Aspen Coker. Back in that same 2020 mark, when I look at persons within our community who were less fortunate and were struggling, the government at that time was giving $1,000 for 3 months. Can you remember?
Yes.
I would have been getting 3,000. My first son would have been getting 3,000. That's 6. I called in on a radio program, and I said to the government who was keeping I think it was a press conference at the time, take my 3,000 and my son 3,000, and I'm going to give a check of a 4,000, making it $10,000 mark to distribute to persons who are less fortunate in my what do you call it, my area here, as we say in politics, constituency number 4. And Mark, I get licks for it because people felt as though, oh, he feel like he got money. But it wasn't that, Mark. I was in a little bit more better position than some persons. And just like you said, you took me salary for 22 months. I felt as a young business person to give back to the community. So never hear you saying that you ain't take no salary for 22 months, Mark. Trust me, I feel rewarded. Have a good night.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. And, you know, people are in different positions in terms of their ability, their financial capability. I decided that it was one way that I could show solidarity with people in Nevis because, let's face it, people were suffering. There's no ifs, ands, buts, and maybes. People were struggling. And we did everything we could. We tried to assist in every way that we could. And I will be forever proud of my cabinet because they voluntarily took a pay cut for, I believe it was 3 months or 6 months, I can't remember. Mine went on for an extended period, but they took a pay cut during that period as well. So the truth be told that we all tried to do our best. We all decided, listen, let everybody try and tie their belt. And part of leadership was demonstrating to the public that we understood, we empathized, and we were trying to demonstrate that we were sharing in the difficulties that they were having. And so that's what we did. Whether it was seen as such or not, it was a matter for the public, but certainly that was the case. Some people try to say, oh, you're playing smart, you're deferring the money. That is not the case. I never deferred any money. I did not get a salary from the Nevis Island administration as Premier of Nevis for 22 months. and it wasn't any deferral. So it's not like when the COVID over, I say, well, okay, give me my money. That wasn't the case at all. So, you know, we all made sacrifices during that time. I mean, I recall, caller, that people went out, people put together packages of food and care packages. I remember as a party, the CCM, we were doing care packages, and then a gentleman said to me, he said, you know, I thank you, but you're buying sardine and thing. I don't eat them things. I don't eat crackers and them kind of things. I prefer it you gave me the money so that I could buy what I eat, because I'm a man who like my vegetables. I like lettuce and tomato and those things. And so we listened and we revisited. And so what we started to do was a grocery voucher. A voucher that was tenable, that was redeemable, I'm sorry, at Rams, at Best Buy, as the case may be. And let me go on record to commend them, because Best Buy, Rams, and Value Mart, all of them partnered with us. So, for example, if you bought $1,000 worth, they would give you an extra $100 or $200. And so everybody was contributing. In fact, as bad as COVID was, I believe it is the closest that I've seen our community in a long time, because people were looking out for each other. People were genuinely, in my humble opinion, looking out for each other. And it taught me a lot. It said to me that we're not bad people in St. Kitts and Nevis, you know. We get sidetracked, we say some bad things sometimes, and we have some people who do bad things. But in the main, speaking broadly, the average Nivision, the average Kittishan, are people who have empathy. They care about their families, they care about their neighbor, they care about people. And that's why I keep preaching. Let us try to appeal to the good in us, because all of us have good in us. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening, you are on the mark.
Good evening, Honorable Mark Brantley.
Good evening to you.
Yes, Carl Brown here from Fountain, Ghana Part and St. Kitts.
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Yes, question on agriculture. We have been hearing about the 25 by 25. The question I have to ask is, how ready are going to be ready the island of Nevis is going to be by 25-25? Because I'm looking at, if we are going to be ready in St. Kitts Nevis, I'm looking at the Federation. All these animals we have running a while, stray animals, I think it's time that we start to pen them up, get them properly looked after by the vets and everything, and get them properly looked after so we could get them into butchering and feeding our people. The other part I'm looking at is I have learned and heard of that Nevis is now making what we call copy reef to increase the fish stock. Very good indeed, very good. What also we are looking at, how ready are the crop farmers is going to be by that time. We need to give more lands, they need to be planting more, and they need to get more ready for that. Also, we are looking at the people in the what we call flowers or rose business. Where, you know, that's a very large business where people are selling like palm trees, rose, and those other plants that people plant in the yard. What about the citrus? How ready are we going to be with citrus, like oranges, apples, pears, golden apples, you know, those sugar apples, those kind of things? Are we getting ready for those kind of things? Because if we are going to be making preparation for 25-25, lots of these things, we have the soil and we can grow them here and cut down that market and cut down the 25% and more import of those things that we can grow here. What say you?
Well, I think you've said a lot that is sensible, eminently sensible. Nevis is trying to be ready. The Minister of Agriculture here, our Deputy Premier, the Honourable Eric Evelyn, tells me that on the Nevis side, we are making great strides. You mentioned ornamentals, plants, horticulture. I don't know if that's a part of it. I think it's more about food, but I stand to be corrected. But certainly, we are making some strides here. In fact, in the Cabinet just today, we were discussing the way forward for our poultry industry that we want to start here on the island, because we want to see that happen this year.
Poultry is a big thing too.
A very big thing. In fact, we import tens of millions of dollars worth of chicken each year into the country, which, if we can even put a dent in that, would take us a long way to our 25 by 25 commitment.
Oh yes.
So chicken in Nevis, we are doing very well in pork production. We have almost self-sufficient in egg production, and we are doing very well in things like lettuce and leafy greens and those things. We have done very well now with our 30-acre Indian Castle fruit orchard, where we have planted a variety of fruits, including over 5,000 coconut palms. Those coconut palms are now
very nice, because you know, you always talk about bringing back the coconut. I always urge all the governments here, even if we have to bring them in from overseas, bring back the seedlings and get our coconut going again, and stop the St. Vincent and Dominica boat from coming in here every week.
But that was the vision of the Honorable Alexis Jeffers when he was the Minister of Agriculture. He imported over 5,000 coconut palms from Ghana. And those coconut palms are now at a stage where the last I was told they're actually bearing now. So those were planted. Those were planted during COVID.
Things, yes. What we need to get up is our animal stock in terms of beef, mutton. You say the pork is expanding.
Yes.
Right. What we also need to be doing, getting our rabbit and ducks and so stock up too, because what I find is that people are not moving towards the duck and the rabbit meat. Those are very, very, very delicious and most delicate meat.
Rabbit and duck, you say?
Yes, rabbit and duck is very nice, and listen, you could do it on the grill.
Anyway, you're on your own. You're on your own with that.
Down, anything you could do it in.
I say you're on
rabbit and duck.
You're on your own with that. I don't.
Oh no!
I'm not eating no rabbit and no duck.
Ah, you will eat it just now, Mark. You will eat it just now.
You think so?
You will be coming on the market just now, and you will eat it.
All right, so.
And you will say, What has kept me back from so long?
Now, man, you can't eat fluffy rabbit. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, man. Mark, it's some of the most delicious meat. You remember we used to say, we not eat no monkey because monkey this and monkey that.
I still say
right?
so. I still say so.
And you see now monkey, when monkey is put out there, back and neck, legs, wings and all those things, monkey 5, 6, 8 pot of monkey sell out before you sell a case of barbecue or cook or dung chicken, which we eat every day normally.
Let me ask you something. You know, there's a saying that you are what you eat.
Oh, that's rubbish and nonsense.
So
that just start, man.
So you don't believe you are what you eat?
That just start, man.
Okay, well that's why I don't eat monkey. Alright, my brother. Well, thanks a million. I think you've raised I think you've raised some interesting points about agriculture, and I can tell you that it's one of the proudest areas in Nevis. I believe we've made some giant strides in Nevis. In fact, we had some of your colleagues in agriculture.
Oh yes, I am the consortium and all those other
they came over
groups down here. different things, they have traveled over to Nevis.
Absolutely.
And they're saying that Nevis is ahead of them.
We had people who came from Antigua. We had some from Anguilla.
Yes, and everybody now is working hand in hand.
Yes, and in fact, we are having our Agri Expo that's coming up shortly.
Shortly,
and that is.
And we think it is having the agricultural open day right there in April.
Right. So when that happens, we get large contingents, now over 100 strong, coming from Sabre and Statia. So we are doing well here in Nevis. In fact, I found out the other day that a lot of the beef and products like that in Statia, that the original stock came from Nevis. I didn't even know that.
You remember when that boat, you remember, I think it's Sea Hustler used to carry on, somebody used to carry on, I used to bring cattle from Statia and those kind of things. Remember those, one time some red pole cattle was coming in here?
Mm-hmm. They were coming from Statia?
Somewhere down there, Statia Sabre, some part down there, red pole cattle was coming in here.
Okay. Well, I don't remember the details, but there is a connection there, and I can tell you that it has been developed. Agriculture in Nevis, I think, has been a success story. Definitely have to give the Honorable Alexis Jeffers kudos.
Yes,
he was passionate about it, and he did a great job.
That thing because he, up to today on Island Tea, they read out well, not say a contract, but a program that was put forth before the government changed. And Alexis Jeffers was the agricultural minister then.
Well, but even the restoration at Bayfords and all that, it was Alexis who had done all that, you remember?
Yes, yes.
So,
and for years I have been calling to restore Bayfords and you know, let us go back to making cheese and you know, making things out of the milk from the animals and so.
He also pioneered the effort to give farmers in St. Kitts a leasehold, a proper lease on the land, so that they could take it to the bank and get their financing. Alexis, I think, was really excellent for agriculture, and in Nevis, I can tell you, he transformed. So what we're doing now is building on the platform that he left. And the Honorable Eric Evelyn, who has been an agriculturalist all his life. You may not know, but he was prominent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture for many years. And he himself has worked in agriculture for a long time. So he's now taken over, and we are doing rather well in Nevis. I'm very pleased. The young people are getting involved. We see more shade house production. A lot of leafy greens and tomatoes and things like that nature being produced in the shade houses. We even now have shade houses in our primary schools. So our primary school students are getting in at a young age. They're learning about agriculture.
And that's what I have been calling for all the time. I'm telling them, don't just do it in the classroom and on the books. They must do it out in the field and have the experience of it. So
with all of that, my brother, is happening in Nevis. We have a group in Brown Hill, community group. They have shade house. They produce a lot of food on a very small area of land as a community effort, and that food they give away or they sell to raise money to help with their meals for the elderly program. So it's a closed loop. All of that is happening in Nevis. So you must come over and see what we're doing.
Oh, I just be in Nevis often, and I will be over there shortly soon again.
All right. Okay.
All right, sir.
Thank you very much. It is 20 minutes to the hour of 10 o'clock. We're taking your calls. 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Those are the numbers. We have 20 minutes left. Just again to remind the general public that the island here in Nevis, I believe, has a lot that is happening. I invite people, especially sometimes our brothers and sisters from St. Kitts. Funny story, during COVID, we invited our brothers and sisters from St. Kitts. We say, you know what, man, come over. So many of you have roots in Nevis, mother, grandmother, grandfather, father, St. Paul's, people, Keon, people there from Newtown. All of those are areas where a lot of Nevisians settled. Come to Nevis, man. Come and see where your forefathers are from. And many of them responded positively. And they sold out our hotels over here. In fact, I have said so before. that it is petitions coming over for the weekend and thing during that COVID period that really kept Nevis afloat. And I always cherish that. But they came in numbers. In fact, one of them saw me at Sunshines one time and he said Nevis became the new Miami because the airports were closed, nobody could travel, so they were coming to Nevis. But one of the things that I marveled at is the number of Kitchitians that I met who were telling me that it was their first time coming to Nevis. That really surprised me. It was their first time coming to Nevis because Nevisians are accustomed to going to St. Kitts. Since I was a youngster in school, we go St. Kitts for outings, we go over for quizzes, debate. You know, you had that interaction. And to see grown-ups, adults, many of them who told me that their families were from Nevis, but they had never been to Nevis. So I believe that part of what an earlier caller was speaking to is that people don't know. Someone told me the other day that a Nevisian, you know, said they were in a taxi in St. Kitts, and they don't believe the taxi driver knew that they were from Nevis. So they said the taxi driver, they're asking the taxi driver about the country and what's happening. And the taxi driver was telling them about St. Kitts and what's going on in St. Kitts. And they said, what about Nevis? And the taxi driver said to them, oh man, nobody don't go over there, nothing happening over there. Over there dead, nobody don't bother with that, nobody go over there. And she told me she couldn't contain her laughter because she is from Nevis. She comes to Nevis all the time. She knows Nevis. But he was a taxi man. And I am of the view that if that taxi man was accustomed to visit Nevis, he wouldn't speak in that way. You see, a lot of times we come to conclusions based on what we hear, based on what our friend tell us, based on what some propaganda we read somewhere. The best experience, the best teacher is to experience it for yourself. And so I continue to invite Kitchitians to come to your sister island. This is your country. Don't let nobody tell you, come and see it for yourself. Come and see what's happening. Get on the boat on a Saturday. Come up, walk around. Take a bus and drive around. Rent a car if you can. See Nevis, because when I hear some of the commentary, I said people don't get it. And a lot of people seem that they have a view that Nevis is where Nevis might have been in the 1950s and the 1960s. Nevis is moving at a rapid pace. And a lot of interesting things are happening here. Do you know there's now a vanilla farm in Nevis? I wonder if the public knows that. That an investor is now growing vanilla in Nevis. Do you know that we have some investors here who have a vineyard? They say they want to make wine, and so they're growing grapes in Nevis. Do you know how many local entrepreneurs we now have involved in agriculture in terms of greenhouse production? A lot of activities happening here. You want to see construction, drive around this island. Don't just stay on the main road. You go off to the side roads, you go up in the villages, and you are amazed at the level of construction that's happening on the island. Incidentally, the government has put in place a Culture Armor 50 special where we are taking off customs service charge and customs duty for those who want to spruce up, I'm using a colloquial language, their house or building, commercial space. If you want to paint up, change some windows, doors, external windows and doors, do your driveway, your fencing, we are trying to partner with you. It's only valid up to, I believe, July or August. But I was pleased to hear that over 20 applications have already come in, and we're inviting people to do more. Let's lift the island, make it look good. And the government is partnering with you to do it. Let's go back to the phones. Good evening. We have 15 minutes left.
Good evening to you, Brother Premier.
Good evening to you.
How you doing, go?
I'm doing well. My day was good. Thank you.
Thanks for the powers of the Almighty Creator. And blessed evening to your listeners via radio and internet. I just like to follow up on something I've been very troubled by. When you come over from the Southeast Peninsula, where there's carcass shell coming over to Wally Beach, there's a fee paid $40, that's the taxi, water taxi. And then when you're leaving from Nevis in the same water taxi area, you have to pay $5 to depart on the ends of the area where you're not paying any money and it shows us. So I would like to ask, what kind of collaboration are we working in this venture when it comes to that area there? In your explanation, because I would like to know, there was some development going on there. We would like to know if everything is completed, that people have proper seating and proper covering when it comes to if rain come, that we don't have this kind of wet down tent that is covering the people if it's still there.
What are you asking? You're asking about the tent or you're asking about the $5? You're asking multiple things.
All of that is in the field because it's on the same grounds about Nevis end.
Oh, okay.
You're talking about the development that Nevis is employing. This is a part of our structural development that's supposed to be completed and have a better way of bringing people to the safety of before the departure.
You take the water taxi in St. Kitts?
In Nevis?
No, I'm asking you a question.
Yes,
Do you take the water taxi in St. Kitts?
Yeah, I do take the water taxi when it's necessary.
Okay. And when you take it in St. Kitts, what infrastructure you have over there?
That's why I'm asking you what kind of collaboration. You ask what kind of collaboration is going on.
But
here.
I'm asking you a specific question.
Because there is no infrastructure right now in St. Kitts.
Okay.
And there is none properly as you stated at the Premier Nevis.
There's no infrastructure in Nevis, you say?
If it is a good structure, like it completed.
What structure you talking about? You're talking about
the lobby.
You're talking about the reception area.
Yes, so you go and
that is now practically that is now practically complete. But I'm just commenting that you seem to be asking about what is happening on this end, when on the other end there's nothing at all.
Because corruption all over. That's why nothing at all.
That's what you call it, corruption?
Yeah, what do you mean? I could call it in the eyes of the public.
Okay.
And
right.
there is no fear, because you and the caller just outloaded prior to your part of that administration what in 2015 and led up to 2022 election. Where is the emphasis that your people was playing that you don't know to pursue within spending money? That was the claim.
Well, that was the claim, but caller,
he said now to educate the people how to really divorce yourself from this power struggle.
Caller, you know, all of us we have an English tongue in our head. We live in a free world. We have an opinion. Opinions are as prevalent as blades of grass. It doesn't mean that they're correct. So if all of those who had a view and had criticisms and complaints, you know what the ultimate answer to that is in a democracy? An election. And we went to the election, and the people voted in an election. And it
claimed that it gives better results than how things were before. You're trying to indicate to us?
No, I'm indicating to you. I'm indicating to you that all that was said about Mark Brantley and the CCM, we're still standing. And we're not standing. And we're not standing because we say we are standing. We're standing because the people of Nevis said that we should be standing.
Okay then. Well, I would just like to leave this video for the Premier.
Good.
You give me a work to do for you, which I ain't free, please, how you occur, but also respect. I have to do it. You see?
I give you a work to do?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Remember, you were supposed to be to be at an event in January, and you had to say that you could not be there because of circumstances. But the question was that it was a different level too for you to send somebody on your behalf. You see? That was the letter was indicating and the follow-up. But anyway, just out of love and care. We would like to know, this is the Black Eye Story Month. What is the Nevis Island administration doing to indicate Black Eye Story be a part of the venture when our people, not just wearing the African clothing, but the integrity within the liberty and the struggle that we people have faced. Not from slavery, but poverty in our kingdom that we have before. before even post-slavery come into place. Because we have to make sure we people have a clear view of who we really are and not what we want them to believe. Because I realize there's a lot of mechanism that freezing the people to be in this belief-making system. And one of the things that we see in this system is that they're freezing a lot of things now too hard as they say AI. And that is the control now was fitting our young ones and more than we reading books. So we like to say, let me open back up those books because AI in the diversity of what people and put into analyzing how our history is supposed to be told within we knowing where we're going.
Okay. Caller, you mentioned about black. You call it what you call it? I story.
Black eye story.
I story. Black history. Black eye story. What I said to you is that I personally, this is just my personal view, I have a difficulty when you're going to say to St. Kitts and Nevis, a black country, that they must celebrate Black History Month. I don't understand that. I would understand it better if you said to us that we should celebrate European History Month. But we are black people. We celebrate our history, our culture every day. So when people get all excited in February, say they must celebrate Black history, I don't sometimes wonder what is that really about. Because as a black country, I would imagine that every day we should celebrate ourselves. We should celebrate our history. We should celebrate our culture. We should celebrate each other. And that's certainly what I try to do. And I think that we would be a lot further ahead if we didn't have this notion that a month in February, as somebody said, the shortest month in the year, is what they say, that we should celebrate Black history. We tend to just consume whatever it is that the media largely in the West tell us that we should consume. If America and those places where black people are a minority group want to celebrate Black history just like they want to celebrate Asian or Chinese history for a month, that is a matter for them because they are not black countries, but we are a black country. So it seems to me, it seems to me, just let me finish there. It seems to me quite strange that in a black country, people are talking about celebrating Black history in a month. You must celebrate Black history all year.
Do you do it?
Every day. I'm a living celebration of everything black. I'm a black man and I'm proud.
You sure of that, Brother Premier?
You asking me if I'm sure?
Yes, I'm asking you, is a frank
I don't understand you asking me if I'm sure. Did I stutter?
May you ask you to stutter?
When me didn't stutter, me talk to you plain, you understand English, you ask me sure.
You sure English is a proper language, my brother, but anyway, I just like to left it here with you by this year. In this time, our people are facing some serious trouble within the political spectrum, and I think it's time now the doctrine and the black stabbing were kind of implying on our people. We need to stop because it's not going to go nowhere further than waste. And I mean that without any fear or favor. Looking at how we're seeing, tomorrow is supposed to be a parliament hearing, right?
Tomorrow?
I thought they said this story, they're supposed to have some kind of parliament sitting. If I was wrong by the age statement, because that is something I heard that they're supposed to have sitting in the parliament of this week. But anyway, if it's not, it's maybe when they want to chop it into. So I hope you get your call before they come in the thief in the night. And knowing who these people be, I hope that these people come with a fear movements as saying they say in the statement. And this is what I'm saying that this is what I represented. No organization group, no body. This is what I representing Rat Higher. The political format in St. Kitts and Nevis is totally corrupt. And it's corrupt because the Freemasons them have a hand in the political realm. And they are still controlling the political parties. But anyway, you have a blessed night with your family and let the ancestors and the divine creator guide you humbly through the night. Give thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Somebody just sent me a message to tell me that the rabbit meat I should do some research because it is some of the most nutritious and tasty. I'd probably, you're right, I don't know. I'm just saying that I don't think that that's something that I would want to partake in. People eat all kinds of things. People eat frog legs. People eat various things. Some people eat crustaceans like shrimp and lobster, and other people say they wouldn't touch that because it's a scavenger. So people eat different things. It's just, I was expressing my personal preference, not to suggest that rabbit is not something that other people eat and enjoy. So to that person who messaged to tell me that I should go and check it out, I have no doubt that it is nutritious and that some people do enjoy it. I just can't see myself. It's just like I hear people say they've eaten monkey, and I have seen it, and I have not decided that I wouldn't partake because I just don't feel comfortable eating that. So it's just people with their different preferences, nothing more, nothing less. So I didn't mean any offense by it at all, and I quite agree that there's some. In fact, I know here in Nevis there's some people who are rearing rabbit, and you go to some hotels, some restaurants, and they have rabbit on the menu. But it's not something that I would order for sure. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left, and we're taking whatever calls we can get. We believe we can accommodate maybe one more caller. So if you have something to say, 869-469-1616 and 869-469-1700. Just so you know, this show is rebroadcast tomorrow at 1 p.m. right here on Vaughan Radio. And I invite those who might have missed it or those who didn't get in early enough to listen again tomorrow, and you'll get a full replay of the show here at 1 p.m. I want to take some time to thank Vaughan Radio, my brother Weber Herbert, for all these years, allowing me this platform and allowing me to be here on the mark. It is a show that has grown in person. Some people say it is a regular Wednesday night, even though they may not call in, they're listening. And I know, for example, that a lot of people in the diaspora, they pay close attention to the show because they have come to realize that on this show you get accurate information, and so for that I'm happy. We have this last caller. Let's take it. Caller, you're the last caller for the night. Good evening.
Good night, Mr. Brantley.
Yes, good evening.
Back.
Thank you so much.
A lovely program.
Thank you. I'm happy you enjoyed it, and thank you for calling in.
Yes. Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruit. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Therefore, by their fruit ye shall know them. And I'm reading from Matthew chapter 7 and verse 15 to 20. May God bless you, keep you, guide you, and protect you from all harm and danger.
Thank you so much. I can't think of a better way to end the show. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your scripture. By the fruits, our fruits, we shall be known. Thank you. God bless you, and have a wonderful night. To all of those who listen, those who are online, those who joined us, commented, whatever your participation was tonight, thank you very much. Have a wonderful night, and we look forward with God's grace to be with you next week, Wednesday, for another edition of On the Mark.
Views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily